Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update from RAU'S IAS. Do not forget to subscribe to our Telegram channel for all the updates and materials. Hello and welcome to the Sunday edition of Daily News Analysis. The edition where we cover the last week's explained section which has not been covered in the DNS and also the last Sunday's The Hindu newspaper. The articles which we are going to cover today have been displayed on the screen and quickly finish up with this analysis so that you can watch India-Pakistan match today. Let us now begin the discussion. But before we begin with the discussion, as we have been doing since last week, we are going to first discuss a question of economy. So in the Prelims 2021, UPSC asks, consider the following statements. Governor of the Reserve Bank of India is appointed by the central government. Statement 2 was, certain provisions in the Constitution of India give central government the right to issue directions to the RBI in public interest. Statement 3 read, the governor of the RBI draws his powers from the RBI Act. And so if you look at the statement, you could have easily answered the question by eliminating the second statement. Statement 2 is wrong since the government has been empowered to issue the directions to RBI under Section 7 of the RBI Act 1934 and not by the Constitution of India. So if you eliminate the second statement, you can easily eliminate E, B and D and you are left only with option C. Apart from that, it is expected of you to know that governor of RBI is appointed by the central government and governor of the RBI draws his power from the RBI Act. And it is not a matter of coincidence that both Prelims Compass as well as March edition of our Focus had all the statements covered in that. We discussed the appointment of RBI governor and Section 7 of the RBI Act. Apart from that, the tussle between RBI and the government with respect to various policies was an important topic of the current affairs and hence it was also discussed in Quality Improvement Program for Prelims Examination or Prelims QIP of 2021. Not to forget Daily News Simplified, where also these provisions were discussed, and we have formulated a question in the Prelims test series as well, which were along quite similar lines as the question of UPSC. Let us now begin the discussion. So the first article which we have taken up appeared as an explained column in Indian Express. Why global fuel prices are up? Now this particular article talks only about the sharp upsurge in the prices of the crude oil in the global market. But there were other articles as well which talked about the increasing natural gas prices and the shortage of coal supply in India. Now you might be wondering, how is the increase in prices of natural gas, crude oil or coal related to my UPSC syllabus? Now let me tell you very clearly, in GS paper 3, there is a line in the syllabus which says infrastructure and energy. And these three, natural gas, coal and crude oil, form the basis and the pillar of our energy supplies. For example, if you look into total installed generation capacity, fuel-wise, coal still forms around 53% of the total power production. Similarly, almost all the transportation, majority of it depends upon crude oil. And so, as the global recovery gains strength, the price of not just crude oil but also coal and natural gas is nearing its highest level since last 3 to 4 years. For example, if we talk about natural gas, winter is yet to set in, but natural gas prices soared over the past few months, especially in Europe. And the price of natural gas in Europe is now 6 times higher than what it was last year. Across the continent, natural gas inventories are falling. For example, just the last week, the benchmark Dutch gas futures price jumped 40% in the morning to touch 162 euros a megawatt an hour, which is an 8-year high. Similarly, if we talk about crude oil, the price of Brent crude breached $85 per barrel mark earlier this week, reaching its highest level since 2018 on the back of sharp increase in global demand as the world economy recovers from the pandemic. So when we have to delve into the causes of increase in the prices of all of them, obviously we have to consider the basic law of economics where the demand is either seen outreaching the supply or the supply is going down. In most of the cases, post-COVID recovery, demand is shooting very sharply, and this is the basic reason why the prices of all these three fuels put together is increasing. No one had anticipated such a sharp recovery of global economy. No one had thought that COVID pandemic or its impact on local and national economies across the world would wane away so fast. And so the producers did not anticipate this increase in demand, and hence they did not ramp up the supply. So this is a common reason because of which the prices of all these three are shooting. But there are specific reasons with respect to each of these fuels as well, which we are going to discuss one by one, starting with the natural gas. As far as the sharp increase in the prices of natural gas is concerned, there are a host of reasons, from economic recovery to geopolitics. So as we have seen, the common reason, post-COVID recovery. Global energy demand fell last year when the economy slipped into COVID-induced lockdowns. When growth returned this year, especially to Asian economies, demand shot up and energy producers struggled to meet their growing demand, pushing up the prices. Even in the US, which is the largest natural gas producer, prices rose from $1.7 per million British thermal units on March 31st to 6.3 per MBTU on October 5. Europe, which is heavily dependent on imports to meet its energy demand, was particularly hit hard. Apart from sharp COVID recovery, there are three other reasons for this sharp increase in the prices of the natural gas. And the first reason is shift towards cleaner energy, especially in European countries. As a part of Europe's shift towards cleaner energy, many countries had moved away from coal to gas to produce electricity. This obviously increased Europe's reliance on gas. On the other side, the continent's natural gas production has shrunk over the years as many countries shut down the production fields over environmental concerns. When we look into demand and supply balance, demand increased in Europe because of its shift towards cleaner energy. Because the usage of coal was down, the usage of gas went up. At the same time, due to environmental concerns, a lot of European countries have put very stringent environmental concerns related to the extraction of gas, because of which the supply went down. And since the demand is increasing, supply is going down, obviously it will result in sharp increase in the prices. But apart from environmental concerns and shift toward cleaner energy, there is another very peculiar reason, which is geopolitics associated with sharp increase in the prices of natural gas, especially in Europe. We know that relationship between Ukraine and Russia is not going well since last 5 to 10 years. And as prices shot up, supplies from Russia via a pipeline that passes through Ukraine and Poland also shrank, which made the situation even worse. Now Russia of course has built another gas pipeline, Nord Stream 2, which was discussed in DNS as well, which will take Russian gas directly to Germany bypassing Ukraine and Poland. But supplies to Europe through Nord Stream 2 are yet to start as the pipeline is awaiting approval from European authorities. And so unless and until the flow of natural gas from this Nord Stream 2 is made live, we'll continue to see such high prices of natural gas. Alright, so natural gas is clear. What about crude oil? And again, the basic reason is same as that of natural gas and coal. Sharp economic recovery of the global economy. But there are particular reasons as well. And the basic reason is the monopoly of OPEC plus countries in the production and supply of the crude oil. Key oil producing countries have kept crude oil supplies on a gradually increasing production schedule despite a sharp increase in global crude oil prices. So these OPEC countries together control how much of the crude oil will be produced. Sometimes they artificially lower the production to respond to the low prices. Sometimes they increase the production when the countries across the world request them so that the prices go down. So as the demand for crude oil increased in post-COVID recovery period in last 3 to 4 months, the OPEC countries promised to increase the production of the crude oil, but the rate of the production increase is not that much. So for example, if the anticipated rate of increase of production was this much, they have not followed that curve, rather they are going very, very slowly. Since their increase in production is slow, it has resulted into increasing prices. Apart from this, another reason is the lack of production in United States of America. If you remember, 2-3 years ago, the global crude oil prices were very, very low. Since the prices were very low, the production in US became unviable or uneconomical. And so almost all the producers in USA stopped the production of crude oil because it was unsustainable for them. There was no profit to be achieved from them. Now the prices have shot up, but the producers in US are not sure until when these high prices will last. And so, if they invest a lot of amount in again initiating the production and then the global prices again come down, it will be huge loss to them. And so, the producers in US are just waiting and watching to see for how long these high prices will be sustainable before they resume the production of crude oil. Third reason, which is very particular to our country India, is the elevated tax levels on petroleum products. The central government had last year increased levies on petrol by rupees 13 per litre and on diesel by 16 rupees per litre to shore up or increase its revenues, as the COVID pandemic forced a sharp slowdown in economic recovery. Central and state taxes currently account for around 53.5% of the pump price of petrol and about 47.6% of the pump price of diesel in Delhi. So if you are paying rupees 100 for 1 litre of petrol, 53.5 rupees out of that is going just as a tax, and these are highest level of tax across any commodity in the country. Then moving on from natural gas and crude oil to our favorite coal. And now here, it's not so much to do with the increase in prices of the coal, but rather reduced supplies of the coal. The shortage of coal has made headlines in last 1 month because of very low reserves being kept by the power producers. And the reason behind that is simple. Of course, the common one. Demand has outstripped the supply, but apart from that, heavy September rains in coal mining areas had hit the production and delivery very hard, and plants failed to build up their stock pre-monsoon because they did not think that September monsoon rainfall will be so high. Because of the increase in the global demand of the coal, the prices of coal in the international market has also increased a lot, because of which our producers have reduced the import of the coal up to a very large extent. Since the coal is very expensive outside, in the external market, they are not importing coal from there. And so, because of these two reasons combined with the sharp economic recovery, the supply of coal is very low currently in our country. So the next news which we are going to take up appears as an explained section last week. Questions around the election of Deputy Speaker. So Rebel SP MLA Nitin Agrawal has become Deputy Speaker in Uttar Pradesh with BJP backing just months before polls. So Hardoi MLA Nitin Agrawal was on Monday elected Deputy Speaker of Uttar Pradesh Assembly, which has barely 5 months left in its tenure. And it is important to know the context of his election. So initially he won his MLA seat on a Samajwadi Party ticket in 2017, but switched loyalty to BJP along with his father. And so 2 years down the line, for very obvious reasons, Samajwadi Party sought his disqualification from the assembly under the anti-defection law. But the petition has remained pending until days before Monday's election, when it was rejected by the speaker. So now, the problem is that technically, Mr. Agrawal, who was elected Deputy Speaker with BJP support against an SP nominee, continues to be an SP member of the Uttar Pradesh Assembly. And so, the developments raise several questions and refocus attention on the 17th Lok Sabha, which more than 2 years after it was constituted in 2019, remains without a deputy speaker. And so these developments entail a lot of discussion, especially around deputy speaker. So what does the constitution say about deputy speaker? Provisions related to deputy speaker of Lok Sabha is dealt with in Article 93 of the constitution, as you can see on the screen, which says that the House of the People shall, as soon as may be, choose 2 members of the House to be respectively Speaker and Deputy Speaker thereof. And so often as the office of Speaker or Deputy Speaker becomes vacant, the House shall choose another member to be the Speaker or Deputy Speaker, as the case may be. As far as state legislative assemblies are concerned, the same provisions are dealt with in Article 178, which contains the corresponding position for Speaker and Deputy Speaker of Legislative Assembly of a state. And so, the question, is it mandatory under the constitution to have a deputy speaker? Because we know that since last 2 years, Lok Sabha is without any deputy speaker. And so the constitutional experts point out that both Article 93 and 178 use the word shall and as soon as may be, indicating that not only is the election of speaker and deputy speaker mandatory, it must be held at the earliest. And so if you get a question in prelims examination according to the Constitution of India, and one of the statement talks about constitution mandating to have a deputy speaker or speaker, you will go with that option. But if you read the article 93 and 178 respectively, you will not find any timeline. And this is the loophole which is being utilized by various legislative assemblies and Lok Sabha, where they are not electing any deputy speaker. And so, what are the time frame and rules for the election of deputy speaker? So all that the constitution says is the election must be held as soon as possible. And so generally speaking, the practice in both Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly has been to elect the speaker during the first session of the new house, usually on the third day after oath taking, and affirmations take place over the first 2 days. The election of deputy speaker usually takes place in the second session, even though there is no bar on having this election too in the first session of the new Lok Sabha or the assembly itself. But the election of deputy speaker is generally not delayed beyond the second session without genuine or unavoidable constraints. In Lok Sabha, the election of deputy speaker is governed by Rule 8 of the Rules of Procedure and Conduct of Business in Lok Sabha. And so according to the rule, the election shall be held on such date as the speaker may fix, and the deputy speaker is elected once a motion proposing his name is carried. Now if we talk about the state legislative assembly rules, there are similar provisions there as well. Once elected, the deputy speaker usually continues in office until the dissolution of the house. Under Article 94, which talks about Lok Sabha, and under Article 179 for state legislatures, the speaker or deputy speaker shall vacate his office if he ceases to be a member of the House of the People. At the same time, they may also resign to each other, which means speaker will resign to deputy speaker and deputy speaker will resign to the speaker, or may be removed from office by resolution of the House of the People passed by majority of all the then members of the House. So these are the three ways through which either speaker or deputy speaker, either at Lok Sabha or in legislative assembly of the state, discontinue from their position of speaker or deputy speaker. So do the powers of speaker extend to the deputy speaker as well? And that is dealt with in Article 95 Clause 1, which says while the office of speaker is vacant, the duties of the office shall be performed by the deputy speaker. And so in a sense you can say that the main role of deputy speaker to act as a substitute of speaker, so that the office of the chair of the house never remains vacant. For example, after the first speaker, G.V. Mavalankar, died in harness, M. Anant Iyengar officiated as acting speaker for the remaining tenure of the house and was then elected speaker of the second Lok Sabha. Similarly, after the speaker of the 13th Lok Sabha, J.M.C. Balayogi, passed away in a crash in 2002, Deputy Speaker P.M. Saeed remained acting speaker until that May, when Manohar Joshi was elected as the speaker. So in general, the deputy speaker has the same powers as the speaker when presiding over sitting of the house. It has been mentioned in the rules that all references to the speaker are deemed to be references to deputy speaker as and when he presides. It has been repeatedly held that no appeal lies to the speaker against a ruling given by the deputy speaker or any person presiding over a sitting of the house in the absence of speaker. And now coming on to the question because of which we are discussing this news. A party member who contested and won the election on ticket of Samajwadi Party later on went on to switch the sides and went into BJP, and so ideally he should be disqualified. But before he can be disqualified, he becomes the deputy speaker. And so what does anti-defection law has to say about this? Does being deputy speaker protect an MP or MLA from the law of disqualification? So let us understand the rules of anti-defection law before we can answer yes or no. So we know that rules of anti-defection are governed by anti-defection law or the 10th schedule. And in that, specifically the 5th para deals with the provisions related to speaker and deputy speaker. So we know that rules of disqualification have been given in the 10th schedule. And there are a lot of conditions we have discussed in earlier DNS which lead to the disqualification of elected MLAs and MPs. But there are exceptions as well. For example, a person who has been elected speaker or deputy speaker shall not be disqualified. It's written directly in the Constitution of India under 10th schedule. But there is an if also. If he, by reason of his election to that office, voluntarily gives up the membership of the political party to which he belonged immediately before such election and does not, so long as he continues to hold such office thereafter, rejoins that political party or become a member of another political party. This exemption applies to Rajya Sabha Deputy Chairman, Chairman, Deputy Chairman of the State Legislative Council, Speaker and Deputy Speaker of State Legislative Assembly as well. So if you read this long sentence over here, which is directly taken from the Constitution of India and hence it is very complicated. So basically what it wants to say is that if a party MLA, let's say A, becomes a deputy speaker, but before becoming deputy speaker, he or she resigns from her party membership voluntarily. And so in other cases, that person would be disqualified according to the 10th schedule. But in this case, since he is becoming speaker or deputy speaker, he or she is exempted. But that exemption is only in two cases. So after the completion of his term, if he does not join any political party, or if he joins the political party through which he got elected in the first place, which in this case would be Samajwadi Party. And so this is quite a complicated case. Since Mr. Agrawal got elected into the Legislative Assembly of Uttar Pradesh on Samajwadi Party ticket, after his term of Deputy Speaker completes, he would have to join back Samajwadi Party or he cannot join any other political party. And so you can see that Deputy Speaker has become a position of prominence as far as current affairs are concerned. At the central level, in the Lok Sabha, you don't have any deputy speaker, and in Uttar Pradesh, you have a deputy speaker who is a fit case for disqualification. And so an obvious question which is raised is, can courts intervene in cases of a delay in electing the deputy speaker? And so a petition before the Delhi High Court has argued that the delay in the election of Lok Sabha deputy speaker violates Article 93 of the Constitution. However, there is no precedent of a court forcing the legislature to elect the deputy speaker. But experts have said that the court do have jurisdiction to at least inquire why there has been no election to the post of deputy speaker, since the Constitution does not envisage an election as soon as may be. Since Constitution does envisage an election by using the word as soon as may be. And so in general, we have seen that the courts do not like to intervene in the procedural conduct of the parliament. Article 122 clause 1 says, the validity of any proceedings in the parliament shall not be called in question on the grounds of an alleged irregularity. So the next article for discussion has appeared again as an explained column in Indian Express. Why Facebook wants to rebrand itself for the Metaverse. So the Facebook has planned to rename itself, and the change could be announced at company's annual Connect conference on October 28th, according to a report by a magazine. For Facebook, the rebranding isn't just about a switch in the company name, but a reflection of company's growing ambitions and focus on new area, which is Metaverse. Now there have been a lot of speculation with respect to the term Metaverse. So what exactly is Metaverse? And there are a lot of technologists and scientists across the world who have started speculating about it. And there can be many complicated answers to this question. But a very simplistic way to look and visualize Metaverse is like a parallel virtual world where users can have different identities, possessions, and characters. But unless and until Facebook unveils its detailed plan, there is no room for speculation, especially for UPSC aspirants. But what it looks like that it will be a combination either of virtual reality with internet or some form of augmented reality embedded into a new platform. Now this form a very important portion for especially prelims examination. For example, in 2019, UPSC has already asked question related to the augmented and virtual realities. In the context of digital technologies for entertainment, consider the following statements. Statement 1. In the augmented reality, a simulated environment is created and the physical world is completely shut out. Statement 2. In virtual reality, images generated from a computer are projected onto a real-life objects on surroundings. Augmented reality allows individual to be present in the world and improves the experience using camera of smartphone or PC. Whereas the last statement read, virtual reality closes the world and transposes an individual, providing complete immersion experience. And so you can already see how important it is for us to understand both VR and AR and also the differences between them. So let us now have this discussion and try to see whether you were able to answer the question or not. Also, as and when Facebook unveils its detailed plan about Metaverse, we will have discussions on them as well. Starting with the virtual reality. The virtual reality uses computer modeling and simulation that enables a person to interact with an artificial, three-dimensional visual or other sensory environment. VR applications immerse the user in computer-generated environment that simulates reality through the use of interactive devices which send and receive information and are worn as goggles, headsets, gloves, or bodysuits. In a typical VR format, a user wearing a helmet with a stereoscopic screen views animated images of a simulated environment. And so, the illusion of being there is affected by motion sensors that pick up the user's movement and adjust the view on the screen accordingly, usually in real time. Thus, a user can tour a simulated suite of rooms, experiencing changing viewpoints and perspectives that are convincingly related to his own head turning and steps. Wearing data gloves equipped with force feedback devices that provide the sensation of touch, the user can pick up and manipulate objects that he sees in the virtual environment. So as you have seen through the videos, in a virtual reality, the person is actually cut off from the reality and a new reality, which is virtually created, is imposed upon the person. Whereas if you look into augmented reality, it is the process of combining or augmenting video or photographic displays by overlaying the images with useful computer-generated data. So if you have tried to measure the distances utilizing your smartphones, there are a lot of applications which enable us to do that. That is an augmented reality. There is no real scale, there is no real inch tape, but still you are able to measure the distance in real life utilizing your smartphone because your reality has been augmented. And so the earliest applications of augmented reality were almost certainly the heads-up displays used in military airplanes and tanks, in which instrument panel information is projected onto the same cockpit through which a crew member sees the external surroundings. Augmented reality is commonly used in electronic first-person shooter games to add environmental, health, and other information to players' viewpoint. Augmented reality applications also have been developed for smartphones to display information such as building addresses, real estate signs, retail sales offers, and restaurant reviews on specific sites seen through the device's viewfinder or electronic displays. And it's very easy to supply such information utilizing a GPS which is linked to a commercial or open source database. So now you can easily compare VR and AR. In AR, the person is not isolated from reality, but his or her reality is added on with some information. So the distinction between VR and AR can be clearly made out. AR uses a real world setting while VR is completely virtual. AR users can control their presence in the real world, whereas VR users are controlled by their system. VR requires a headset device, but AR can be accessed with a smartphone. AR enhances both virtual and real world, while VR only enhances a fictional reality. And so, coming back to the question, coming back to the UPSC standard and see whether we are able to solve this question or not. So, Statement 1. In AR, a simulated environment is created and the physical world is completely shut out is wrong. Statement 2. In virtual reality, images generated from a computer are projected onto real-life objects or surroundings is also wrong because that is AR. So if statement 1 and 2 both are incorrect, A is gone and C is gone and we are left with B and D. Let's check out the third statement. AR allows individuals to be present in world and improves the experience using the camera of a smartphone or PC is actually correct. Since 4 is there in both the option, the right answer was B. So you can see that the terms which appear in the newspaper, a very basic question on the understanding of those terms are asked. And so it is not required to go in much detail. Let us now move on to the next article. And now is the time for very small prelims pointer kind of news. This news article appeared in the Hindu newspaper last Sunday. Sabarimala Ayyappa temple opens, rain restricts pilgrims. So the Ayyappa temple at Sabarimala was opened in connection with 5-day monthly ritual at 5 p.m. on Saturday. Now Sabarimala temple has been in news since last 4 to 5 years because of the entry of women into the temple. It is a temple complex located at Sabarimala hill inside the Periyar Tiger Reserve in Perinad village in Kerala. And it is important because it is one of the largest annual pilgrimage sites in the world, with an estimate of over 40 to 50 million devotees visiting every year. The temple is dedicated to a Hindu brahmachari or a celibate deity Ayyappan, also known as Dharmashastra, who according to belief is the son of Shiva and Mohini, the feminine incarnation of Vishnu. Sabarimala is important because the traditions of the temple mark the confluence or the meeting point of Shaivism, Vaishnavism and other Shamana traditions. And so let us quickly also talk about the famous case. So traditionally, women belonging to a particular age group have not been allowed inside the temple premises. And hence, a public interest litigation was filed in 1991. Under which the Kerala High Court ruled that the restriction of entry to women ages 10 to 50 to the temple was in accordance with the usage prevalent from time immemorial, and it directed the temple board to uphold the customary traditions of the temple, and also concluded that since there is no restriction between one section and another section or between one class and another class among the Hindus in the matter of entry to temple, whereas the prohibition is only in respect to the women of a particular age group and not women as a class. But in 2018, Supreme Court of India, in a majority 4:1 decision, overturned the ban on entry of women. Then the next important news was 60 injured during Banni festival in Kurnool. So 60 people were injured, 4 of them critically, during the Banni festival organized as a part of Malmalana Swami Kalyanotsam last weekend. As per the tradition, people take part in stick fight during the festival. And so it is a festival that is celebrated during Dashera in Kurnool district of Andhra Pradesh. It is a violent form of celebration where people from 3 villages fight with long bamboo sticks. Many devotees who participate in the fight get injured, and so it is a unique feature of this particular event. Let us now have a look at the question of the day.